All right, let's jump in. Nick, thanks for joining us on the pair program.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so this is another bonus episode of a mini series that we call How We Hatched. And so today we have the former chief software officer for the U.S. Air Force and Space Force, and the founder and CEO behind Ask Sage, a generative AI platform that enables both government and commercial teams to enable secure access to Gen AI models. So Nick, your journey from tech entrepreneur to government innovator, has really kind of reshaped how technology is integrated in national defense. So we're pumped to have you join us on the pod today.
Oh, thank you. Excited to be here.
Awesome. All right, now before we dive in, we like to start with a pretty deep question off the break. What did Nick have for breakfast this morning?
Oh, fruit. A bunch of fruit. That was yummy.
Nice. Is that the go-to?
Yeah, absolutely.
Good
Easy.
stuff. Yeah, healthy start. I dig it.
Healthy. Yeah. Try it.
Uh, Perfect. All right, yeah. Now let's jump into to the heart of the conversation now. We in true kind of How We Hatch form, we like to get into the journey of the entrepreneur before we dive into some of the innovative tech behind Ask Sage. So,
Right.
in doing my initial research, I read that you founded your first company at the age of 15, which is just kind of crazy. What sparked your interest in entrepreneurship at such a young age, and how did this kind of first venture shape your career path?
Yeah, I started coding at 7, and then at 12, I created my first game. I made 50 grand, and I used that 50 grand, to create my company at 15 back in France. I mean, it's unusual, particularly in France. At the time, not a lot of entrepreneurs so young. I was the youngest French entrepreneur at the time. That was a lot of fun. I don't know. I guess I always wanted to build stuff and create stuff, and kind of like getting things done. And I guess that leads you to being an entrepreneur, I guess, in this world. So that's
Yeah,
all.
was this something in the family? Did your parents, were they entrepreneurs, or what kind of stemmed that for you?
Yeah, no, my dad is a journalist and my mom is a nurse. So yeah, no entrepreneurs in the family, I guess.
Gotcha. So you grew up in France. You started this first business. What was your next step from here? Was this a progression of continuing down the path of starting your own new businesses, or did you go into a corporate environment and get some of that exposure?
Yeah, no, I created overall 12 companies back in France, and then I moved here. So I did a whole bunch of companies, sold them, innovate, built 187 products, I think now.
Wow.
Yeah, no. I mean, other than a few engagements with the buyers of the companies that bought us, I never spent time in the corporate world, I guess.
Mm. What was that first company that you built, and what was the problem that it was solving?
Yeah, so I was part of the team that helped create PHP, the programming language, and so we had a first company to build e-commerce website at the time that was pretty innovative back in France. So we brought the SSL payments back then to Europe, and we were the first one to partner with banks to do it securely. And then we started selling, kind of CRM and CMS, content management system websites to be able to help companies do business on the internet back then. So
Yeah.
pretty fun.
Yeah, just still it's shocking to me at age 15. That's wild. I love that kind of like early entrepreneur spirit.
Yeah.
This obviously led down a few different paths, and one of the big things that we always hone into here is being in the DC area, like GovTech, Defense Tech Innovation. Talk to me about this kind of transition from entrepreneur to government service. What kind of motivated your transition from being a tech entrepreneur to taking on this a significant role like the chief software officer in the U.S. Air Force?
Yeah. So first, I guess I moved here about 15 years ago now. Became a citizen. I think it's about 10 years now. I'm not sure. But the next month after I became a citizen, I was at DHS as a chief architect. That was pretty crazy. I wanted to give back and make a difference, and that was the time during the ISIS attacks and a lot of people, getting targeted and attacked. And so wanted to make a difference, and so I started DHS as a chief architect. Built a lot of the zero trust and kind of cyber stuff there, and then spent about 18 months appointed at DHS, and I moved to DoD first as the special advisor for DevSecOps to the OSD ANS acquisition sustainment team, and then we moved to create this chief software office in the Air Force and Space Force, really partnering with DoD CIO to bring DevSecOps and continuous delivery of capabilities to production to scale across the department. So that was a lot of engagements across DoD, and built a pretty significant, set of engagements with Cloud One, Platform One, that we created at the Air Force and Space Force to, be able to do the first over-the-air update of software on jets and bombers and space systems, and a lot of fun stuff.
Yeah, I want to expand on that, but before we dive deep into some of those initiatives, some of those like the DevSecOps initiatives, coming from an entrepreneurial background, obviously working in smaller startup companies, many of which were your own.
Yeah.
What were those different major kind of like cultural differences that were you were experiencing in these government positions, and then how would you say like your entrepreneurial background influenced some of your approach to building and trying to innovate in those government roles?
I mean, I guess you can make it more different, right? Between
Yeah.
the military side that I knew nothing about, and kind of, completely changed the culture. And then, of course, mission that are so important to the nation, with people that are putting their lives on the line. Can't compare that to a stupid mobile app or whatever, right? So I think it's been completely mind-boggling in the first few months for me to get used to kind of the culture and the mission, and also the way the system works, which honestly doesn't really work well.
Right.
And there's a lot of issues with the department, the way we buy, the way we sustain, with the way we build, the way we reinvent the wheel, the way we fail to collaborate across teams. So there was a lot of issues, and also the pace and the lack of velocity, and um, was really mind-boggling to me. I remember one of the first few engagements um, we started to understand kind of the key priorities to focus on, and we were starting to look at cost and how to get it done. And I remember thinking, oh, that's easy, that's 100 grand to do this, and then getting quotes at the million plus range across DoD, and we started to see, wow, there's a DoD cat tax, I guess, to doing business, in the department. The way we have these companies helping us, often with this kind of DoD bubble that is the defense industrial base, with clearances and
Hmm.
all the things that prevent startups and innovative companies to participate. So that was kind of an awakening moment,
Yeah.
to realize what we got to do. And that was the first couple of weeks in the building. And also, like, seeing these meetings where I remember my first meeting, I showed up, talking about agile, and there was like a good 20 people on the main table, and another 20 around next to the wall, as we love to do it. um, and already I remember listening and clearly seeing that no one had done agile ever in their lives. And so I asked the question, I say, hey, who here has used agile in real life? And it was a study group on how to implement agile for DoD, right? So kind of important that you've used it before. And there was only one person that raised their hand out of 40 people, and that was a pretty big awakening moment for me to be like, so what are you doing here? Why are you here? So that was not a great start for me to build good rapport with all these people. I was always pretty blunt and pretty clear in my intentions, and a lot of people are not used to that and play politics all day, and I'm just not like that. So that was
Yeah.
a good first couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, you're an outlier, right? And I think this is kind of like foreshadowing into, why and how, as Sage kind of, came to be and became a successful product so quickly. But I think that injection of, an entrepreneur into that environment is really a theme that I think in the last five-ish years, 5, 10 years, probably more so recently, a lot more folks being akin to, we need this different type of outlook. We need these different perspectives. We need to shake things up. You saw it early on. And so it kind of gave you an advantage to, kind of starting to get the wheels turning on ways that you could probably innovate in a much quicker capacity. But, important to kind of see what it's like on the inside in the
Right.
seat of an end user before you can do that as a vendor or an industry partner. I wanted to kind of jump back into some of these initiatives within like the DevSecOps initiatives. You know, just kind of talk a little bit about some of those unique challenges you've faced and kind of implementing agile and DevSecOps practices within these structured environments. You kind of touched on it, but like maybe a little bit more as to why it's so challenging, especially in like a military setting.
Yeah, I don't think it's that challenging, honestly. I think we like to pretend it is. We like to pretend software is special. I mean, the mission is special, but software is software. And of course, there's tremendous risks at doing it wrong. And you don't want to use people that have never done it before to do it in DoD first. So that's part of the challenge, the culture and kind of the way to think about continuous delivery of value and getting real time feedback from the end users and all these things that we take for granted. On the commercial side, building software rapidly, getting feedback loops very fast, and trying to make sure we're not wasting a bunch of time and money building product that no one wants to use. Um, and so, what I felt was that everybody was begging for it. People were just kind of waiting for someone to take the lead and remove the barriers to entry and remove, give that top cover, protection, if you will, to get things done and empower, the people at the lowest rank that know how to do these things to get it done. And so that was kind of my job, is to really, uh, you know, be the punching ball instead of those guys, right? Enlisted and majors and captains getting stuff done. And so, we did a great job partnering with all these people to kind of bring this to life really rapidly in weeks. And I think the velocity was such that, the building was not used to that kind of pace. And we demonstrated that a small group of people can actually come and completely disrupt the way DoD does business. And what I found is, if you run fast and you get stuff done, very few people want to get in the way and have the courage to to be the one slowing you down. And so, what I found is you just keep moving and ignore them, and no one is here to slow you down. And I think that the fear for many of the government employees is to take that leap of faith to like go and do it and ask for forgiveness later. I
Hmm.
find that the chance of getting in trouble if you follow the law, and I'm not saying go do stupid things, but just common sense things, is you have no risk of losing your job. And so I think it's kind of that complacency that you know um, got really became the norm, to do business in DoD, and the lack of urgency and the lack of risk taking has been kind of the norm, and we just can't afford it anymore. So we need to step up that game.
Yeah, yeah, well said. Yeah, that there's a pretty consistent chain of command to break out of some of the norm and to challenge some of the status quo is almost a bit frowned upon, which is the opposite of what you see with a lot of commercial tech innovators, folks
Right.
that are building, across the country, Silicon Valley, building quickly and kind of challenging the status quo. It's a reverse style of thinking than maybe your traditional embedded governments, but
That's right.
folks. Um, let's kind of move on to this genesis of Ask Sage. So when was it that you kind of had the initial idea, and talk to me about that transition to kind of making that leap into starting this up.
Yeah, so we started Ask Sage January of 2023. So right after the big um, push of ChatGPT, right? And so I started using it. started to see beyond the gimmicks and see how much it would impact my day-to-day life in coding and cyber, and just doing my LinkedIn engagements and my emails, and I mean, all the way to coding, right? And so we pretty quickly realized this is going to be something that's going to disrupt the way people get things done and how to empower them. And so it's kind of an assistant on steroids, chief of staff, lawyer, coder, right? And so I was pretty quickly aware that we need to bring this to the department if we want to be able to move fast and break those barriers, and that we need to find a way to do that quickly. I also was tracking, the CCP trying to bring their GPT Beidou stuff uh, to the Chinese government, and so that's scary because you have way more people, eagerness to disrupt and get that augmentation of velocity with Gen AI, which today with Assage is about 35x, so one person turning into 35 people. So that's a
Wow.
lot. It's not just 20%, 30%. We're talking like 35 times faster, up to 50 times for contracting and legal and other things. So coding, 90% of Assage is built by Assage. So I mean, the value we were able to create actually with two people when we built Assage, my wife and I, with Gen AI, empowering us to get things done has been mind-boggling when you compare to my other companies I had to build and the number of people that were needed to get to the same kind of levels of speed and delivery. That's been mind-boggling, and so we knew right away that this had to be, commodity and easily accessible in the department. So that was really something we wanted to get done, and we were able to get FedRAMP High and DoD Impact Level 5 authorized in a few months, and very very small investment by using Gen AI again. And so that's been a massive enabler to show also startups and companies that they can get stuff done.
Yeah, it's really cool to see this next wave of startups that are building with the use of Gen AI and not needing the overhead that's necessary, right? So all that trickle effect of not as much capital being needed, which is a good timing for that, just because access to capital is super expensive and very difficult.
Right.
And so some of these tools coming out are just so timely, and I love how it's not only a tool that's being used to roll out for your customers, it's being used internally for you to scale your own business.
Right.
So it's really neat to see that, and I love hearing that success story. I have to expand. So your wife, has she ever partnered with you before on previous ventures, or was this the first one?
No, it's the first one. Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
How's it going? I'm always curious on like co-founders that either married or siblings. It's always an interesting dynamic.
Yeah,
Your
technically, I
co-founder is
guess.
basically like your partner in marriage, anyways, right? It's just in a business
Yeah,
setting.
you can do a bigger partnership anyways, but technically, I guess she's not a co-founder. She joined after a year, but doesn't matter. She's a COO of the company, and she's been awesome. That
That's
makes
great.
a massive difference. And so, yeah, I think it's obviously something you want to be cautious about, and you want to do it right. And it's not for everybody, but I think it's been going very well.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I wanted to expand a little bit more on, this idea of what an LLM agnostic platform entails and why it's crucial for the future of secure, like, and adaptable AI systems.
Yeah. Yeah. I think when I built Sage, I wanted to make sure it was built the way I would want to consume it
Hmm.
in the government and also as a company. And so, we don't know who's going to win. A lot of different players between Google, Meta, OpenAI, Anthropic, and a bunch of open source models coming out day and night. So you want to be able to tap any model and train your data once, and have this agnostic layer between your data and the model, so you can consume any model right away when they come out. And so we built a stack that's capable of doing this, and that's been a tremendous enabler for us to, within same day, be able to deploy the latest models. You take the O3 model that came out, 2 weeks ago from OpenAI. Within 3 hours, it was on Ask Sage, right? So that kind of stuff enables your velocity, and you can try things out and see what sticks and see which model does the best job to get your different tasks done based on your needs and based on what you're trying to achieve, and also the costs, right? Which matters at scale. And so we had to build kind of this abstraction layer for billing and for consumption and for security and for data ingest, where you can ingest your data once. You can have this zero trust layer where you can label data on a per cell basis, and then label it and then tie it back to each user on a need to know basis, so you can enforce that need to know. So that's been a huge enabler to be able to do classified work and be able to also go after the regulated industries like banking and healthcare with that need of privacy and security as a baked in consideration, and not bolted on after the fact.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a common question we get, in this whole dual use kind of ecosystem, right? Where folks, ask the question, is it better to kind of, try to angle and start in a, in a government setting, if you're able to kind of prove that, this can operate efficiently in a regulated, secure environment, does that help, alleviate some of the selling pain points when you're going into other regulated environments like healthcare or fintech?
I mean, I think it goes both ways. At the end of the day, you need to have a good product that can scale and have not a bunch of technical debt and cyber debt where you take shortcuts. And we see a lot of companies do that. They put security last. They don't think of scale, and then they have some quick wins, and then they have a massive tech debt and cyber debt to fix along the way, and it just doesn't scale and turns into a nightmare. So I think, for us, we had to build the right foundation from the get go, be able to run on any cloud, be able to be completely air gapped, be able to be deployed on the customer fabric, be able to run at the edge, be able to tap any models, and be able to, comply with all the cyber best practices, um, and bring that security baked in. That was kind of the foundational pieces of the puzzle from day one, and I think we did a great job keeping that in, as a foundational piece of the technology. And then you see others, come up and try to rebuild what we built, particularly within the government, internally with government teams or contractors paid to rebuild off the shelf products, which not only is silly and short sighted, but it's also kind of comical to see those guys trying to compete with the company that does this for a living. And what's scary is they end up building a subpar capability with
Right.
spending millions of the taxpayer money, and then what you don't have in those products is kind of that product mentality, where all these considerations for scale and reuse and you know saving the taxpayer money, and being able to consolidate and build capabilities that can be reused across the civilian agencies, the DoD, and the IC, and also commercial, are not even a factor, because they want to sell again and again the same things. Where we want to build a commercial product that's off the shelf and reusable and easily accessible and reusable across agencies. And so that's why we're so cheap, right? I mean, you can literally get started at $15 a month on our stage and get an account and get started. So the barrier to entry is non-existent, right? And we see the government spend 5, 10, 15 million, which, by the way, a 15 million engagement on our stage will give a DoD-wide license of our stage, right? So, and they have like 20,000 users,
Right.
compared to the 4 million users we would be able to do with that same amount of money. So that, and people don't always pay attention to these things, right? Um, and that's why you see, immense amount of funding being wasted in across the government, and you see it now with Dodge, looking at some of these things. Um, but if you look at DoD, I would argue probably 70% of the funding is going down the drain on day one. So which is a pretty scary number.
Yeah, I mean, it's a model that's clearly under the microscope at the moment. The idea of shifting things to taking commercial, tech products that can be injected versus building everything from scratch. It's just, I don't know. It seems like a common sense concept, but it's also a model that hasn't changed in years. And so, getting stuff to, getting change through the door, and what's been a very pretty rigid ecosystem for years is not an easy thing to do. I do like to have an optimistic mindset that, looking at a case study like Ask Sage, things are changing, but there's still a lot of work to be done. Your background clearly, played a big part in helping get this technology into the right hands. Your background in cloud and cyber and these environments, obviously propped up, like, you're building this with that mindset already intact. So I think that certainly helps versus the founder that maybe had no ties to defense. Wasn't chief software architect for some of the largest agencies. So I think that's a good case study. I want to kind of pull on this thread a little bit. In our discovery call, we talked a little bit about you're slowly become this fastest growing defense company, right? Well, not slowly. You've become one of these fastest growing defense companies. Supporting some 14,000 government teams. We
Yeah.
talked about this breakdown between government agencies, but also corporate customers to kind of have that fine balance. Um, I wanted to go a little bit deeper into one of the largest Gen AI deployments with the Army. Can you talk a little bit about this case study and how it kind of came to be, and maybe expand on the level of impact that it's had through this engagement?
Yeah, I mean, I can't help but to be sad a bit when I talk about the Army engagement, coming from the Air Force to see, the Air Force and the Space Force behind, way behind what the Army is doing. When we left the building back in 2021, the Army was so far behind us, it wasn't even funny. And now they're leading the pack on everything, DevSecOps, cloud, and Gen AI and AI as a whole. And that has to do, of course, with the leadership, particularly with Leo Garciga. The Army CIO is really a visionary guy, and he gets stuff done. It's kind of a very similar to what I do, and he's really thinking outside the box, and he's not afraid to get stuff done. And so he started an engagement very early with Asage, first a few hundred users to see what sticks, learn from it. He did a great memo enabling the consumption of Gen AI securely instead of what the Space Force did with a very short-sighted ban on Gen AI, banning all Gen AI use across the Space Force for almost a year, including with public distro data, which is unheard of. That's never happened in history of any technology on the planet. Um, so you couldn't even use it with Google data, right? So which is unheard of. So very short-sighted for the new fancy service, DoD service that's supposed to be innovating and bringing innovation to the DoD as this newly born innovative service without all the impediments of the other ones, right? To innovate allegedly, and as you can see, leadership has everything to do with whether or not an agency can innovate, because Army has all the impediments of the legacy old, DoD service, and yeah, the Space Force was the one with no impediment, but poor leadership that led to disastrous outcomes. And so, Army has been awesome, right? They are starting now, 150,000 users,
Wow.
which would be the largest Gen AI deployment in at least in the government, if not, even maybe on the commercial side. Um, so it's so many use cases, between coding, cyber, acquisition, contracting, legal, data analytics, saving the taxpayer billions for a very small investment, a few $1 million, and so the return on investment has been pretty incredible for the taxpayer, and I think it's probably one of the only way we can use technology to save time and money, particularly with the cuts that are going to come, with the new administration. I think if you're going to cut people and you're going to cut, funding, you have no way but to start automating and, getting rid of the noise.
Yeah.
And for that, there's just no better way than technology. And I think Gen AI particularly is going to be the low hanging fruit and the easy, push button to get things done. And so Army has been leading the way, and so now we're going to be working on secret and top secret as well. So that's going to be a huge scale. And they did this IDIQ with us that's accessible government wide. So they were smart enough also to be like, hey, we need to make this available to the entire government and not just DoD or not just the Army. So now anyone can buy it very quickly and have it available within hours, with no barrier to entry. They can even use a credit card to buy licenses at $15 a month and get started. And for $90 a month, you get 10 users. So that's $9 a user. That's a game changer. So no other cost, no nonsense, no additional cost every time we release. 5 times a day, we're not charging more for the new features or the new plans, or it's just flat price, easy to go, easy pricing, and scalable,
Mhm.
which I think is key. We built it ready to go after the entire workforce, because we think, right, anyone that has a known blue collar job needs this, right, to go faster. So
Yeah, I mean, as far as timing goes, you're in this perfect storm with this new administration, with the amount of cuts, the plan in place to supplement the output. You're really kind of perfect timing for pushing Ask Sage and taking this use case and really building on it. So
yeah,
um,
assuming people understand that they need technology to replace what they lost.
sure,
And the fear, right, is some people will be in this freezing mode where they don't want to innovate, and they are scared of making decisions, or any changes. And they would be stuck in this like state of less funding, less people, and yet no, way to accelerate. Um, so that's scary a little bit, right? We got to spend a little bit of money to then save a bunch of money. So it's not just like cutting stuff, right? It's
sure.
also investing in better things. And so I know the administration understand that, but I think my fear is the people that will execute this may be worried to invest in this kind of new culture of fear. There's a lot of fear right now, a
Hmm.
lot of uncertainties, right? So I think it's very important that people understand that, hey, the only way to succeed in this is going to be to use technology, which is what companies do, right? To come and save money so that you can then, still produce value, right? And not just take cuts and then lose all the value you used to be bringing to the taxpayer. So
Yeah, we talk about this quite a bit on the podcast, and also, we have an entire, kind of tech recruiting piece to our business, right? So we're always having conversations with engineers, with product folks that, yeah, it's no secret that over the last 3 years, there's been a lot of tech layoffs. It's a big issue happening, in the as we record this right now, right? You're getting big tech layoffs from Meta, performance based, they say, and they're still looking to hire up folks that are technically savvy in areas of AI and machine learning. And so, what we try to encourage is look, the role of tech workers is going to be changing, and in order for you to be a part of the conversation, to be considered for that next wave of what's in demand, you're going to have to adapt and take on and upskill yourself.
yeah.
So there's an opportunity to jump on it. A lot of folks refer it to like the internet boom. A lot of folks were like, yeah, I'm not buying this. I'm not really sure what this is all about. And the early folks that got in, they rode a really successful wave. It's just very hard, I think, for folks to wrap their head around change. And
Hmm.
it is a scary time. Everybody's role is probably going to be impacted in some way, shape, or form. The question is, do you want to be a part of the positive impact that it brings, or the downside of it? And so, yeah, hopefully the folks that listen to this, that maybe are anticipating some sort of change in their current role, they see it as motivation or encouragement to go go get a certification, go get a course under your belt that's maybe prompt engineering related, and figure out how to best take whatever your skill set is and add that complement with deep tech, progressive tech.
Yeah,
um,
we got 12
for
hours of free videos on the website for people to get started. So on our YouTube channel. So that's a great
oh,
start
cool.
right there. Then a bunch of free courses. I mean, it's so easy to find, courses on pump engineering and you're right. People that are putting their head in the sand and hoping it's going to go away are going to pay the price, and it's not going to go away. It's going to get harder and harder to keep up and catch up. And honestly, the velocity of innovation is such that you can't now wait months or years between waves. It's continuously changing, and so learning how to learn by yourself and really investing in yourself is probably the biggest skill you need to have. And if you're still afraid of change, you're not going to be able to be in that business. There's just it's going to be so much change so often that you can't not embrace it. And so that's going to be probably the biggest disruption is the velocity of learning compared to what used to be 10, 20 years cycles is now going to be a year or 2 year cycle max. So that's
Yeah.
going to be very disruptive.
Yeah, it's a good point. Well, the good news is, YouTube's a beautiful resource,
Yes.
and so anybody that has a Wi-Fi, connection has access to some of those classes. Um, I wanted to, just kind of, hone in on a couple of things here because throughout your experience, it seems like you're always at the mold of like pushing boundaries of technology, and we can kind of see this trend or these themes from you from cybersecurity to cloud services and now AI. What is it that you would say kind of gives you this continuous drive for innovation, or is there like a certain set of principles that kind of guide this new exploration of new ideas for you?
Well, I don't know. I think it has to do with the passion that I have for the tech,
Hmm.
and so that you can't if you don't have it, it's very tough, right? To be okay spending so much time and learning and investing in all this time and money into these new waves of innovations. So it's a mindset. It's it's passion. It's trying to get things done and also doing the right things for your kids. I mean, it's I think it's a lot of different things. And for me, it's been also making sure that the nation has the tools we need to be able to win against China. And I think that's been my prime push for our kids, so they have a chance at winning against China in 20 years, and giving them all the deterrence and the tools to be able to achieve that.
What kind of advice would you give to let's just say aspiring entrepreneurs, this next wave of entrepreneurs that are looking to innovate? We'll dial it into the defense tech ecosystem per se. What would you say are a couple of things to keep in mind when they're thinking about building that startup that's going to be the next big thing in the defense tech?
Well, there's a first step that needs to be said that people tend to ignore, which is not everybody is an entrepreneur, and that's okay, right? It's fine to be number two. It's fine to be number three. It's fine to be part of an existing company. Not everybody's brain is designed to be. It's very painful, and so people think it's easy, and it's just not, right? And so that's number one. Number two, if you really are fully committed, and that means financially and mentally to doing this, um, then particularly if you're going to go after the DoD, you can't do it half baked, and so you're going to go all in. You're going to have to think about hiring the right people to help you. You're going to have to, if you don't know the market, really try to understand it and not build stuff in a vacuum. And then you're going to have to also understand security requirements and all these things. And so there's a lot of things that come into play, right, to go after the DoD. And many companies get burned, right? They all go after getting a grant, cyber, um, and trying to start there, which is a decent first step, right? But it's way more complex than that. There's a lot of moving pieces, and you need to be surrounded with the right advice. And you can't do it half baked. We see a lot of people like trying a bit to get in, spending a little bit of money, but not enough, and then it backfires and they lose it all. right? So if you're going to do it, you probably need to hire, at least one sales guy that understands public sector, right? So you need to do things that, particularly if you've never done it before, you need to invest to some degree to your success. And just like any market, maybe, but DoD has a lot of, you know, special, you know, acronyms and, handshakes and right. So it's like a bubble. We have two bubbles, right? In the U.S., we have the Silicon Valley bubble, and we have the DoD defense bubble. I call the Silicon Valley, the kumbaya bubble. Everything is nice, and they refuse to work with DoD most of the time, and they think everybody is going to be nice and whatnot. And then you have the DoD side, which is the complacency bubble, where we fail to have urgency and get stuff done, and if we don't make them merge and collide and burst into a single bubble, I guess,
Yeah.
we're not going to succeed as a nation, right? So that's what we had back during World War II, when all this was created with ARPA and now what is DARPA, right? And all these things to innovate. And Silicon Valley was created, by the department,
Yeah.
ready to innovate. And people now refuse to engage with the department. And that's very scary, right? Because China, of course, is forcing all their companies to work with them. And I'm not saying we should do that, but we should really have the culture and explain to entrepreneurs and companies as to why it's important that they do willingly
Yeah.
engage with the Defense Department. So
Yeah. So we need to bring the kumbaya together with the complacency and
yeah,
make a new bubble, right?
a new bubble. And
I
it's going to
like
be a
that.
mix, an average of each, right? So then you average like you raise the complacency now to some urgency level, right? And then you have the kumbaya, everybody is nice, to like, oh, wait, people are not always so nice, and we need deterrence, and we need tools, and we need weapons, and we need, to be a strong nation to deter people from doing silly things to us. So I think, if they don't combined, we're never going to succeed. And, what you see is people comparing U.S. companies' success to Chinese companies, right? So you have people comparing, AI companies in the U.S. to AI companies in China. And the U.S. is leading despite the DeepSeek nonsense that you've been hearing. We're still leading, right? But what people fail to realize is that DoD does not have access to best of breed US companies. Meanwhile, the CCP has not only stolen most of the US IP through hackings, but then they also, took the Chinese IP from their companies. And so they are in a much better position as a defense department to have access to best of breed technology compared to what the U.S. Has access to, and that's a very scary state to be in. And we need best of breed in DoD, not just in companies.
Yeah. Yeah, their approach is, a little bit more unethical than
Yes.
most. But yeah, no, I think you're spot on. We've got a lot of conversations coming up on the podcast that's really talking about this race and the importance to innovate and do it quickly. So I think your insights are spot on. I wanted to, we talked a lot about business here, professional life, just a little bit of like personal reflection, because I'm an entrepreneur as well. I know that life oftentimes can be completely impacted by what's going on in the business.
Yeah.
How do you kind of keep the two separate? What are any kind of Nick hacks that you have that kind of helps you balance the professional high speed lifestyle with your personal life?
That does not exist. And by the way, that's why being an entrepreneur is so hard,
Yeah.
right? People that claim they do this, they are usually not very good entrepreneurs,
Hmm.
because you don't turn it off, right?
Yeah.
And there's no off switch. There's no weekends where you stop thinking about business. That does not exist. And if it does in your life, then you're probably not gonna be at the same level as others that don't have the off switch, and then you can compete, right? And so that's the issue in this world of competition, right? You want to be able to move fast and do the right thing. It doesn't mean you just become like Elon, right, where you spend 120 hours a week working, right? and that's fine, right? There's a balance, and there's healthy and non-healthy. But if you start thinking, oh, you're gonna turn off things the weekend or whatnot, that's not gonna work. Now, doesn't mean you don't prioritize family and you don't do the right things for your family and kids, and you can still do that. I go pick up my kids at school right after, at the end of the day. My wife drop them off, I pick them up. I mean, there's things you can do, right? And build your schedule around it, and value that time with the kids, and take the time right with the wife and whatnot, and block time and manage your time and understand that your time is the most valuable thing you have. And so, not wasting with stupid meetings and people that just want to waste your time, and also people that are just naysayers and always tell you you can't do X, Y, and Z. And you know when I did my Fedem High engagements, I had people tell me, oh, you're two people, you can never do that, it's not going to work, right? And then when we got it before they did, when they had 15 people full time and 3-4 million bucks invested, and they still don't have it, and I have it,
Hmm.
it doesn't hurt to send a little email and be like, oh, pretty, what happened?
Yeah,
And look, it may sound pity and stuff, but that's how you get the little bit of excitement of like disrupting things, and it's a good ego boost. And I think having a healthy ego is totally fine, right? We see
sure.
people like, oh, this guy's an ego. Well, some people can afford to have one, right? You take someone like Elon again. I'm okay with him having an ego, right? Um, Not okay with a government bureaucrat that's done nothing in life other than saying no to people to have one, right? That's not the same, right? So and so all these things have to be a factor in your decisions and how you orchestrate your life. And I can tell you with Gen AI, I don't make a decision in my business without asking Asage first.
Hmm.
And so it becomes your chief of staff, it becomes your investor guide. And I mean, it's everything we've done, uh including building the product itself, but even like the business decisions and the way we invested and spend money and raise money and all that were driven by Gen AI.
Yeah, and thank you for not giving me a blanket answer there. I appreciate the real raw truths of it. A lot of folks, think that they're equipped to handle, a life of being an entrepreneur. Could tell you it's filled with a lot of depression.
Yeah,
There's a lot of, I always say like I've got a bit of a bipolar disorder, and a lot of that's just how the business is doing week to week,
yes,
right? And so unless you're putting that level
that's
of
totally
pressure on you,
normal, by the way. That's
it's
yeah.
normal, right? Yeah, that's
Yeah,
why
and
there's
you're not
there's
going as
group,
fast as you want, so now you get depressed, and then it's like, oh, you get tired of it, right? And
but
it's like, oh, why is it not going better faster? And why are people not buying my product faster? And why is it taking so much pain? And but yeah, I guess it's the reward is proportional to the pain, right? So
sure, and I
um,
think it's
yeah,
important to have little micro communities where you can kind of share those experiences with others. You're not the only one that's dealing with that. I
right.
used to love like the startup meetups that used to
Hmm.
happen. We used to do a bunch of them before the pandemic, and then it's hard to kind of feel that connection virtual. So intentionally having a little community that you meet with.
Yeah, we need to
If it
restart all this stuff, right? COVID is
Yeah, we
gone now,
do.
so we
We
need to
do. Well, I'm starting to see it
yeah,
pop up. There's some
good.
interesting little micro communities popping up, like Station DC, which are
Yep.
really intentional about bringing together these key pieces that make innovation happen, especially in regulated spaces. So,
Yeah, and the key
um,
with those, right, is not to go to places just to hear, people babble and,
yeah,
complain, and right. It's all about the right being surrounded by the right people
yeah,
and people that get stuff done, right? If you keep hearing people that are failing or not trying or not, complaining, and like that's just a way. So it's all, there's a lot of meetups I remember where, people just complain all day. Like
yeah,
we don't need that, right? You need positive attitude. You need people that lift you up
yeah.
and you let them up too, right? But it's a two-sided street, and too often it's one-sided, and that gets very toxic.
Yeah, we'll have to connect offline in terms of like some of those communities that you partake in, or events that you feel like are really fruitful, because I'm always looking for that next wave as well. Um, let's go ahead and transition. We're gonna close with a fun little segment. It's called the 5 second scramble.
Yeah,
It's a little bit of rapid fire Q&A. Some
right.
professional, some personal, not too personal.
That's okay.
Um, let's kind of kick it off. Are you ready?
I was born ready.
All right, let's do it. Explain Ask Sage to me as if I were a 5-year-old.
Interesting. As Sage helps you save your time and get stuff done.
What's your favorite part about the culture at Ask Sage?
We don't talk about culture all day, and we get stuff done.
I like that. What type of a technologist will you say thrive at Ask Sage?
Someone that doesn't talk all day and get stuff done.
You're making this a lot easier. What are some tech roles that you're actively hiring for?
Yeah, we just hired 20 people. We're still hiring a couple, not so much on tech, a couple of VP of sales, VP of marketing, a couple of technical customer success. But we just hired 20 people in the last like 4 weeks. So I'm yeah, in the last 4 months. So I'm exhausted.
Remote, in office, or
All
hybrid?
remote.
All
We
remote.
don't even have an office. So
Very nice. Um, what is a charity or corporate philanthropy that's near and dear to you?
a lot. We do a lot with Wounded Warriors and UNICEF, and and my wife is a pro at this, so she's handling it for me because she was helping a lot of nonprofits, so she
Mm.
knows it all the scams and the ones that do waste a bunch of money
Yeah.
with all these expenses and the ones that don't. So you want to listen to her, I guess.
Yeah, it's good feedback. All right, so we already know, it's a fruit for breakfast, but can you describe quickly like your morning routine?
Yeah, it changed quite a bit recently, but I used to go fast back at work. So eat the fruit while working and having meetings. Now I try to take time, either eating or just in a tub or something, and that's where my ideas flow.
Mm,
And I like to, and so like a sauna or something, you get your ideas flowing, and it's actually pretty refreshing.
mm,
So I try to do that more instead of back to back meetings where you don't have time to even think about anything. That's been very helpful for me to do that. And yeah, spending saying goodbye to the kids. My wife bring them to school, and then I pick them up. Always a lot of fun. So yeah,
that's special. Having those clear cut kind of, parts of your day that you
yeah.
always look forward to. Um, if you could have dinner with any tech icon, past or current, who would it be with?
Tech icon. Well, if it's gonna be dinner, it's always gonna be with Elon. But if it wasn't Elon, um, I don't know. Past. Um, would be interesting to meet Steve Jobs.
Yeah,
I met it a couple of times, but really have more time would be interesting. Um, well, I guess I'm lucky, right? I meet most of the people I would want to meet.
yeah,
Whether it's so yeah, whether it's at Microsoft or OpenAI or whatever. So I'm kind of lucky. So I guess I don't really have someone I would want to meet because I already met them. I don't know.
yeah.
Maybe
I mean,
in the past. There's
Musk could
so
be
many in the
fascinating.
past, I guess, right? But current ones, I get to meet them, so it's always fun.
That's great. What is the worst fashion trend that you've ever followed?
I don't think I do. So yeah. I mean, you look back at pictures when you were a kid, we all look silly,
Yeah,
but I don't know if
yeah,
that's fashion trend or just our parents to blame,
yeah.
I didn't really follow it, Otherwise, because I couldn't care less, I've never really done anything silly like that. So I can't think of something that I was already, starting at 15, I was so young. Sure, I'm already, I already look young at 40 now. But imagine at 15, if you see my pictures showing up at meetings, people thought like, "What are you doing here? Where's your dad?" And so I was always in suit and stuff. So I was already like very much, you know, uh, marketing myself as a as a businessman in a suit with a tie, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. Get the baby face.
yeah,
Um,
and if you look back at pictures from the 50s and even the 1800s, suits have not changed much, right? So
no, no. But
it's
fashion
very
in back in the
stable,
day always comes back around.
right?
Um, what's something that you love to do, but you're really bad at?
Yeah, I'm good at everything I do. I don't know. No, honestly, oh, well, I don't love to do it. Well, maybe that's the thing. I'm always good at the things I love. That's for sure. But what I'm not good at is patience for like minute things, like so I do woodworking, for example, but I would not want to spend time on little finite
Mm.
details. I'm more like, oh, I want to build a desk, and we'll build a desk and be done, right? So like finite stuff where you have to take your time, and oh, no way,
Yeah,
can't do that.
millwork or woodworking. I mean, it's a tricky one, but it's
Yeah.
something to be said about physically building something with your
Yes.
hands.
And I like building like big stuff, and but not like, oh, I'm not gonna spend time like on the details on the tables, and I'm
Right,
like, it's table, right? This is
right.
it.
All right, we'll close with the last question. What was your dream job as a kid? I might know the answer.
Yeah, I don't know if I had a dream job as a kid.
Maybe
I
you're
don't know.
doing it at 15, you know?
Yeah, I think I did what I wanted to do. I mean, there's only one job that I would always want to do that I will not be able to do anytime soon is being president of the United States, because I wasn't born here. So I guess it's always about the stuff you can do, right? That you want to do, right?
Well
I bet
said.
if I could, I wouldn't care.
Yeah.
But because I can, I want to change the constitution, and it's a lot of work.
A lot of work goes into that. Appreciate the time spent with us, Nick. I mean, obviously you're doing something really interesting, and this level of innovation across the government ecosystem is super timely. So we're all rooting for you as an
Thank
entrepreneur
you.
and for Ask Sage. But thanks for hanging out with us on the pod.
Thanks for having me. A lot of fun.